Welcome back to Whisky Whims with me, Stuart. Today we've got Springbank Society member release 5-year-old 100 proof. This is the second version of this. A year before, I believe it was last year, they released the bourbon version, fresh fill bourbon. This is fresh sherry, specifically Oloroso. It's 57.1% ABV, 1,900 bottles, and it cost £55 with an £8 delivery from the distillery. So I hadn't originally opted in for this ballot as I was on night shift and I was asleep and I couldn't really be bored chasing it that much because I still had half of the bourbon bottle left and I felt like I would enjoy the bourbon more. So when they when they released the email saying that the site had crashed and there was double orders and there was going to be another ballot, luckily for that I was able to make time, or I don't think I was on night shift, or maybe it wasn't a ballot. Oh no, they made it a ballot, sorry, that's what it is. I think the first one was like a first come first serve and then the second was a ballot. So I managed to get to the ballot anyway, and obviously I've got a bottle, so that's how I ended up with a bottle. That's the label, pretty straightforward. We'll get down to the nose, the palate, the finish, and see if it's a Whisky Win or a Whisky Bin. Yeah, the nose, there's blackberry jam, definitely. There's juicy raisins. There's also a bit of strawberry sauce that you'd expect on something like ice cream from the ice cream van, that kind of squirty, almost chemically, that's how I describe it, strawberry sauce. So it's quite a sticky and sweet dram so far. There's a touch of dampness, like a kind of somewhat dunnage element, but not really that funky or anything. It's not really Springbank reminiscent for me. I think the sherry is quite powerful, and it's predominantly sherry that you're getting, and that won't be bad for a lot of people. I'm certainly enjoying it enough in the nose, but it's predominantly those sweet elements there, the sherry characters, the sherry characteristics. There's warm toffee, also wine gums, and specifically the purple wine gum. I don't know if it is a blackcurrant wine gum. I don't know what flavour it is, but that kind of likes to our blackcurrant jam anyway, or blackberry jam. Yeah, it's very sticky, very sweet, and it's something I'd expect more from a PX cask. I mean, yeah, I think it's a bit more sweeter, a bit more stickier, a bit richer than just Oloroso. And Springbank, I'm almost certain, exclusively use Oloroso unless they state otherwise. So there's a high possibility that this is Oloroso. I mean, it could be PX, but they normally state that on the label. But anyway, we'll get down to the palate, see what that has to offer. Yeah, it's oily, really oily, nice, lovely mouthfeel. It's perhaps older than you'd think it is if you were to get it blind. Most likely the cask is helping this. I've said before, kind of sherry and peat help mask the youthfulness of a whiskey. And this is both peated and sherried, so that's definitely helping. It's more in line with the Springbank character now. Definitely a lot of dunnage feel, kind of dirty feel in the palate. There's something like, I don't know, an oily mechanic's workbench or something. That's how I would describe it. That's so pedantic, but just hitting out all those classical Springbank tasting notes, WD-40, oily, petroleum, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's like if I think about work, when the mechanics have been working away and there's oil everywhere in the workshop, it's kind of like that kind of flavour that you get. It's nowhere near as sweet as the nose would allude to. You'd think that the palate would be quite sweet as well, but it's toned down. However, there's still there's like espresso, like a spoonful of brown sugar or something. It's got that kind of bitter, earthy espresso taste to it, but there is just a little sweetness to it. Nothing as powerful as the nose, but it's still reminiscent, or still there to remind you that it is a little bit sweet. There's also some sort of kind of like a rare steak with a plum sauce, or even, I don't know, just something meaty. I was going to say like a duck, because you don't really get steak that often with plum sauce, you tend to get duck, but some sort of meaty some sort of carnivore thing. Sorry, vegans and vegetarians, but something like that, but with plum sauce over it. More focused on the meaty and the plum sauce element rather than the specific meat. So yeah, the finish, it's long, it's warming. I think the sherry and the spirit are tying well together in the finish. You're getting a lot of cola cubes for me, maybe some prunes as well. And you're still getting a little bit of a dirty element that was evident in the palate, not so much the nose. But yeah, there is a little bit more of a dirty griminess towards the finish. A lot more obvious in there than it was in the palate and the nose. I think that's once the kind of sherry just dissipates, you're left with that Springbank. So we'll get down to my rating, and if you're new here, how I rate my whiskies is on 3 factors. Would I buy it again? Do I think it's worth it? And would I recommend it? If we get 1 out of 3, it's a whiskey bin, which is a seldom thing. If we get 2 out of 3, it's a whiskey win. So I do believe the bourbon is probably better for me. It's just, this doesn't really need the water either, I don't think, but I just feel the sherry is very dominant in the nose. It somewhat subsides, or it's a bit more subdued in the palate and the finish, but it's heavy, reliant on that sherry in the nose, and the Springbank character really isn't there in the nose. So yeah, I would say I prefer the bourbon. So I don't think I would buy this again. I would definitely buy the bourbon again. Would I recommend it? Yes, I think any sherry fan will love it. I think a Springbank fan will still enjoy it, but they might be a little bit disappointed that it's not as bold in the Springbank department. If you were struggling with Springbank, this is probably one to go to. I know Stevie, my father-in-law, he's not a big fan of Springbank, but the heavily sherried ones I've given him, including the likes of Kilkerran, he's enjoyed a lot more. It just takes the edge off a little, and that's probably the same with this. So yeah, I think if you're struggling with Springbank, it's probably one to go to. So I would recommend it, because I still think it's a good whiskey. It's not a bad whiskey at all. Do I think it's worth it? It drinks older than 5-year-old. It's only £55 with the £8 postage and packaging, £63. However, yeah, it's definitely worth it. I don't feel hard done by. I don't feel like I'm regretting the purchase. Like I said with the Springbank local barley Oloroso, it's a good whiskey, great whiskey, but it's not necessarily what a Springbank fan or lover is looking for, because it's a little bit too dominated by the sherry. But other than that, it's 2 out of 3, so whiskey win. So I hope you've enjoyed the review. I've been Stuart, this has been Whisky Whims. I'll see you later.